the Season 3 finale of Live Life for the Stories. This episode isn't just about making a movie, it's about the choices we make when time is short, knowing when not to speak up, and realizing that nature is really in control. From missing holidays to clashing creative visions, and with a life-changing accident just around the corner, this is the story of how Camp Hero Time pushed me to grow up behind the camera. Lesson 1. Ambition is important, but don't sacrifice what you can't replace. You might be surprised that the Season 3 finale isn't about Carpe Diem, but sometimes life and other opportunities get in the way. As I mentioned in the last episode, just as I finished my first semester of college, I got an offer to be the assistant director of the Horror Motion Picture Conservatory's winter film called Camp Hero Time. I'd worked on Instructions Not Included in 2010 and a long shot in 2011, so it felt natural to say yes in 2012. By the time I got back to Monterey County, pre-production was already in full swing. They'd had a read-through on December 13th, crew training on the 15th and 16th, and they'd decided this would be better as a web series instead of a feature film. My first official workday was December 18th, and we went location scouting in Pine Canyon Ranch, Salinas. It was freezing out there, but the woods were a great setting that reminded me of Two Graves back in Season 1, Episode 5. We locked it in as our main location for the film, but I knew being out in the middle of nowhere meant that nature would play a big role in how this film came together. As I mentioned in the last episode, on December 20th we shot our Carpe Diem scenes for the day, but later that night I got an email from Michael Buffo called Updated Crew List, and when I opened it, I saw that I was now listed as the second AD, and someone named Jamie had been hired as first AD. I was upset. I'd been the first AD back in high school, so being listed as second AD as a college student felt like a step backwards. But strangely, it didn't change anything. I never met anyone named Jamie on set, not that I remember, and I was still the first AD for the film. I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but it prevented an argument, so I was happy it worked out the way it did. December 25th, 2012 might have been the best Christmas of my life. It felt warm and lively. It was the first time I'd brought a girlfriend home for Christmas, so everyone was on their best behavior. My aunts brought their dogs, my mom didn't smoke or drink in front of Selena, she even made her a stocking for Christmas. And my grandpa went all out on Christmas dinner. In our family, he always cooked the big holiday dinners, and his children would clean up after him. Contrary to a lot of stereotypes, the way I grew up, the patriarch of the family cooked the important meals, and the matriarch, my grandma, didn't have to lift a finger. My girlfriend also introduced us to something called Christmas crackers, a British tradition. You pull on them and they pop open with a little toy or paper crown inside. After an early dinner, everyone moved to the living room to exchange gifts. I got some amazing film gear that year. My uncle Steve, who actually gave me this shirt because he ran the Eco Challenge, helped me set up a shoulder rig with a follow focus, basically a wheel that lets you adjust focus smoothly, a 50mm prime lens, and a tripod that, believe it or not, I still use today. It's the one holding the camera filming me right now. After that, Selena tried to get us to play a song on the little whistles that came in the Christmas crackers. It didn't go great at first.
Ready? 5, 6, 7, 8.
No, Mom! Oh, you said 5, 6, 7, 8?
Oh, sorry.
She was tricking you.
Ready, set, go.
But we got half a melody out eventually. To be honest, it's a little sad to remember because I never had that many family members in the same room ever again. I didn't know it at the time, of course, but if I had, I might have cherished it more and spent a little less time chasing career goals. Anyway, December 26th was supposed to be our first official production day of Camp Hero Time, but nature had other plans, and the rain forced us to do a rehearsal and prep day at AMP Studios instead. Honestly, I was grateful to have that day because it meant I had more time to get familiar with the actors, props, costumes, and gear before we were actually out on location making it happen. There were a lot of cast members, costumes, and props, and luckily I knew most of the people involved already, and it was nice to see familiar faces like Max Huston, Rachel Carter, and Nate Mandarago, as well as Mike and Brittany. We even started choreographing fight scenes that day, which was crucial because our schedule would be very tight once we were on location. December 27th was our actual first day of production, and this one was tougher than before. It was a fantasy film set in the woods in December, so cold, wet, and uncomfortable. It was fun to catch up with friends, but the work was grueling. We had a 3-camera shoot for certain scenes though, so getting coverage was pretty easy. The real challenge was costume changes. We had to drive 10 teenage actors out as far as we could, hike into the woods, and shoot scenes in one set of outfits, but there was no dressing room, just mud and pine needles. So then we had to hike back out, drive back to base camp where the costumer could get everyone looking the way she wanted, then get all of them back out again to shoot in the new costumes. Foreshadowing. I had no idea that I had exactly 1 year left before I died, albeit briefly, but my clock was ticking and I wish I'd known. On day 2, Michael Buffo lost his voice, partially from sickness, partially from yelling out across the frozen hills all day, so I became his voice on set. He'd whisper directions to me and I'd shout them out to the cast and crew, doing what I could to keep things going, but we were not running at maximum capacity anymore. There was now a short game of telephone to get instructions out from the director, and because of that, I think Mike let me be in charge a little more than he otherwise would have. It was a strange twist, because a couple days earlier, I thought I'd been demoted. Suddenly, I was practically directing, but that was not an easy set to lead. The cast was mostly high schoolers, and the scenes often involved large groups. It was like herding cats. If I hadn't known most of them already, I don't think we could have pulled it off. But that day also had one of my favorite moments from the entire production. Nisha Addleman, who you might remember from Season 1, Episode 5, did some makeup magic to turn Max Huston into an ogre. It really worked since he towered over the kids in the cast. And Kellen Gibbs was also on set to oversee VFX that day, so it was a nice blast from the past, little mini reunion. People joked that Max looked like a George Hamilton zombie, and the whole vibe that day was upbeat and comedic. By the end of that day, anyone in my family who had time off for Christmas was back to work, if they hadn't been already, and I was still out in the woods. My family didn't hold it against me because they saw that I was pursuing my career and I'd been home for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, 2 of the most important days in my family, and Selena was part of the film too, so she wasn't upset with me for taking it on either. However, if I had known it would be the last Christmas with everyone under the same roof, I might have spent a little less time on set and a little more time with my family. I'll get to this later, but the following Christmas was only 2 days before my accident, so I don't really remember any of it. And after that, I never saw my whole family in the same room again. I got some great experience and gear that year, stuff I still use to make films today, but I never got another moment with all those people. Not one I can remember anyway. So here's the real takeaway. Choose your projects carefully. Don't take holidays for granted. You never know which one will be your last. And ask yourself, what will I regret missing 10 years from now? Lesson 2, choose compromise over conflict, especially in front of students. On day 3, we shot multiple fight scenes, and honestly, it was almost a complete mess. But we got the footage, and that's what mattered the most. During our impromptu rehearsal day and any downtime on set, I'd be choreographing sword fights with the cast, and we were making progress. I taught a few of the students basic katana techniques, stuff I'd picked up from my background in ninjutsu. However, a stunt coordinator showed up, a friend of Mike's, and he started teaching broadsword-style stage combat. That would have been fine if we'd had time to retrain everyone, but we didn't. We were shooting those fights that afternoon, and suddenly days of training and choreography were being thrown out the window. Unfortunately, this stunt guy was older than me, and he laughed out loud when he'd heard I'd taught them kendo-style moves. But I didn't care about the style, I just needed sword fights on camera, and time was running out. Some of the weapons worked better with broadsword techniques, sure, but I'd brought in weapons from Ninja vs. Samurai, and those didn't. My choreography leaned towards martial arts, his leaned towards medieval. Neither was wrong, but we weren't exactly synced up. That's when I realized, when people make fantasy worlds with elves, orcs, wizards, etc., they usually fall into two groups. Some say it's all made up, set it anywhere, cast anyone. But others see it as an extension of European mythology because of the King Arthur legends and an Oxford writers group called the Inklings, which included J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. So that group thinks that fantasy worlds should feel British or Northern European. This debate still comes up today around shows like Game of Thrones, The Rings of Power, or The Witcher. Should these fantasy worlds include everyone, or should they stay true to the author's culture and homeland? The truth is, there are valid points on both sides. Inclusivity is important in a more globalized world than ever before, but many authors, especially before the internet, wrote about the culture they were from because it was the only culture they knew about. But that day, we didn't need to settle an age-old debate. We just needed to finish the movie. The bigger problem was, not only had he undone existing choreography, he'd made people doubt my creative input. I'd spent days building trust with this cast after Mike lost his voice, and suddenly I looked like someone who had laughable ideas about how to run the production. And yet, I had to be the voice of the director until Mike's voice came back. So what was I supposed to do? I was 18, he was a 30-year-old friend of the director. I couldn't try to pull rank in front of the students. So instead, I had him focus on one group of cast members that didn't have as much choreography yet. He got to plan it his way with that group, but when I said, that's all the time we have to shoot, we shot both what he had choreographed with one group and what I had choreographed with another. It wasn't perfect, but the compromise worked. No bruised egos, no arguments in front of the students, we got it shot in time, and the film kept moving. Lesson 3, respect the power of nature. On day 4, Vincent Cardinelli joined us on set. He was playing a shaman-like mentor figure, one of the older, wiser characters in the film. He played that part very well in his fake fur costume. But it was extremely cold, so we couldn't keep him in that costume for very long. It was nice to see such an old friend of Mike's come back for this film, though, and it made me wonder, would any of my high school friends be willing to help me with a film over 10 years after graduating? But that day, we had this man dressed as a shaman on set, talking about the power hidden within nature. But sometimes, nature reveals its power in extreme ways. Just as my accident would be caused by the power of nature, specifically water, this next experience highlights the dangers of wind. That afternoon, a high school friend of mine was in a serious car accident while driving on Highway 152. A sudden gust of wind was so strong that it pushed her car across the lane divider and into oncoming traffic on the highway. She managed to survive, but with significant brain trauma. Now, I wasn't there, so it's not really my story to tell, so I won't get into the details, but it's important because her brain damage was both similar to and different from what I would experience 3 days shy of a year later, and it should remind us all to both respect nature and value the time that we have. Anyway, production took a short break for New Year's, but we were at a new location on January 2nd for day 5. Camp Hero Time had moved production to B&G Ranch on the Oils of Paicines farm about an hour outside of Salinas. The cast and crew were sleeping there for 4 nights straight, similar to Plan of Action's overnight trip from Season 1, Episode 4, but longer, colder, and more remote. But I couldn't commit to 4 nights out there. I had too many obligations back home. My family, my girlfriend, carpe diem, and college was starting up again soon. So I agreed to do a day trip instead. I got there around 8 a.m., back in the cold, and honestly, by that point, I was feeling the strain of the last few days. Still, it was cool to see where the final scenes of the movie would be shot, and to get to say goodbye to the people I'd been working with. One moment that stood out was talking to Samir Narain from Season 3, Episode 1. He had lots of ideas about the films he wanted to make. He seemed much more dedicated than a lot of the others, and that stuck with me. Fun fact, Camp Hero Time required a lot of visual effects. Probably more than the budget could realistically cover, because effects were difficult and expensive back then. Realistic ones even more so. I wasn't involved in post-production, but I heard that Kellen Gibbs stepped up to help fill in some of those gaps because he'd done his own VFX for Crisis and had gotten pretty damn good at it. I've never actually seen a cut of Camp Hero Time, but I do know it screened at the Carmel Art and Film Festival that year. But you'll have to wait to Season 4 to find out how 2 Carpe Diem actors almost got hypothermia so we could finish the movie. I hope you've all enjoyed Season 3 as I try to balance keeping it entertaining and funny, but also informative, and let me know if there's anything you'd like for me to focus on or talk more about as we head towards Season 4. Bye for now.
Son of a poxy sorcerer!